asked me to talk about writing, and that is a subject near and dear to my heart. First of all, I'll tell you why it's near and dear to my heart. When I was little, these are not obviously pictures of me. I would sit on I would actually...
He wants to help.
Hey, say something.
Say hi.
What does a cow say?
What does the cow say? Good job. Not sure how he feels about that.
When I was little, I used to sit on my bedroom floor and just write stories. They were usually about cats and dogs. And after I was done, I always thought they were not that good. But I used to love just sitting and writing. And then I went to college, and I didn't know what to do. I searched and searched for a major, and finally I decided English, because I love writing and reading. Then I didn't know what to do after that. What do you do with a degree, a bachelor's degree in writing? So I went to graduate school to become a potential professor. So that's how I felt about the whole experience. I didn't have a great graduate school experience, but I did get to teach these two people, Charlene and John, in my classes, and that was really fun, and they were great writers. So after that, I decided, well, what else but maybe be a journalist. So I worked as a journalist for a few years, and that kind of petered out, and I didn't know what to do after that. So I thought, well, let's bag the writing thing. It's not really working. I'll go to law school. So I went to law. Oh yeah. When I was interviewing for law schools, I went to a fancy law school in New York called Cardozo Law, who had offered me a full-ride scholarship. And this professor said to me, "Now, what do you plan on doing with your law degree?" And I said, "Well, I actually don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be a writer." He's like, "You better not go to law school." But I said, whatever, I'm going to go to law school anyway. So I went and I got some good knowledge and didn't know what to do after I got my degree, because the law school world is really crazy, and the law world is really crazy, and people are super aggressive, and that's not really me. But then I found this awesome job. And I write these pieces that go on the internet about legal cases that come up. This is something that I wrote. And you can find it online, actually. But as you can see, it's really pretty dry writing. It's helped me become a better writer because I've learned how to write more concisely. But it wasn't really fulfilling my dream of becoming a writer. In the meantime, I had a family. So that kind of quenched some of my thirst, and I became quite content. But still, in the back of my mind, I was like, man, I really love writing. It would be really fun to take that up again. And then I thought, one time, my brother David and I were involved in a writing group. It was really fun. It was all done online, and it was a neat connection between me and David. So I thought to myself last fall, you know what? We could do that with online. I could just start our own writing group and just tweak it a little bit, kind of pattern it after this writing group I was in with David. And then I thought, who should we get for members? Our family members! So a lot of you guys in here are in a writing group. It's called the Pen Men, and it's been super fun and rewarding, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So the question is, why write? This is one of my favorite questions. This is one of the biggest reasons I've pursued this line for my entire life. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. That's how I feel. The minute, like when I'm talking to someone and I use a vocabulary word that I've never used before, I'm like, that was awesome. I explained myself so much better. And when I read something that someone has written that explains something I didn't understand before, I feel like it expands my world. This is Anne Lamott. Many of you may know her. She's an awesome writer. She says it's about becoming conscious. Writing's about becoming conscious, and you can throw the lights on for your reader, he or she will recognize his or her life and truth in what you say, and that will help you overcome your isolation. I really like what Alice Hoffman said. She had a really bad bout with cancer, and she was bedridden for quite a while. She could get up from her bed and go to her desk and get back down to her bed. That's what she did for several months. But she wrote, she said she wrote to find beauty and purpose, to know that love is possible and lasting and real, even though she was in a darkened room. And she said if she was too damaged to walk around the block, she was lucky all the same. Once I got to my desk, once I started writing, I still believed anything was possible. And that's how I feel with writing. It's a real, you can transcend your circumstances and go to somewhere even more beautiful. Another thing I love about writing is sometimes I have no idea what I'm going to write about, and I'll just sit down and just let it all just kind of come out of somewhere, and I discover something about myself that I didn't even know before. Or I discover something about the world that I hadn't really consciously thought before. And I really love that about writing. Grandma Mom is in our writing group, and she uses that platform to tell stories about the family and stories about herself. And it's so wonderful. We love reading her pieces, and it always gives me a better insight into her and into the family. And then Dad, he writes poetry that's also somewhat the story of his feelings for his family. Dad also uses it to do a lot of commentary, as you see in our emails. So that's really cool. Jane, she was very generous to let me, to give this quote to me. Jane uses it as a form to help her in therapy work. Writing has been indispensable to my inner work in therapy. It's helped bring important issues to the surface where I can work with them, as well as helping me hold onto concepts that seem a bit slippery. I often might find myself going back to things I've written previously to check my progress. It's always rewarding to see how far I've come. Writing has truly been a gift during this process. It's given me my life. I remember talking to one guy, he's a stay-at-home dad, and we see each other regularly at the library. I was telling him I started this writing group. He said, that's awesome. He's an artist. He comes up with these sculptures and stuff. And he said, everybody can consume. We do it all day. We look at Facebook, we eat, we sleep, we just read stuff that other people have written or look at other artworks. He said it's something way different to produce. You put something completely original out to the world, and that gives you a sense of accomplishment. And I know there's other ways to get that, like what Laurel does, and different forms of art, but it always feels very good to produce. Pablo Picasso said, all children are born artists. The problem is to remain an artist once he grows up. And ever since having this little guy, he's taught me a lot about just how you can look at the world completely different every day and use any object to explore and create. And that's one area that writing is fun to explore with the creativity side of it. Okay, so writing advice. This is my own deeply held sentiment since joining the writers group. If you can think, you can write. I've had a ton of experience in writing, and our writers group amazes me. People who don't have a ton of experience just write the most amazing things, and it's all just coming from their brain and their personality and their experience. And it doesn't, even if there's some grammar errors or whatever, the overall piece just can transcend any sort of limitation. So if you're a unique individual, if you can think, if you had experience, you can write something amazing. This is Neil Gaiman. Start telling the stories that only you can tell, because there will always be better writers than you, and there will always be smarter writers than you. There will always be people who are much better at doing this or doing that, but you are the only you. You can tell a story that's completely original that people are going to love, and it's going to contribute something to the world. So you just should. Sylvia Plath said, the worst enemy to creativity is self-doubt. And I found that to be the case. If I sit down to write something and I say, oh, I'm not good enough to do this or whatever, then that's it. You're going to be stopped right at that point, and you're never going to go anywhere else, and you're not going to create. So you just have to overcome that. Jack London. You can't wait for inspiration, you have to go after it with a club. And that's something I found to be true also in the writers group. I've, for a long time, wanted to produce regular works of writing, but I always say, oh, I'm not inspired. I'm just not inspired right now, so I'll wait until I get some inspiration. But being in the writers group, I've committed to writing something every time we have a challenge, a writing challenge. And I found sometimes I'm not at all inspired, and so I just sit down and I have to write something, and oftentimes something good comes out. Sometimes not very good, but something good. William Faulkner, get it down, take chances. It may be bad, but it's the only way you can do something really good. So you do have to let the bad stuff come out in order to let the good stuff come out, and you have to be okay with that. And then one more William Faulkner quote, don't be a writer, be writing. And that's really how I feel about myself these days. I don't really call myself a writer, but I do love writing. I probably will always love writing. And so that's what I feel like I do. I write. Thank you.